All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Cailin, and I am back with Dr. Colonel Blair. We are going to be revisiting last year's video on BCP, beta-caryophyllene. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. We go into a very thorough overview about what it is, the benefits, and what it does. So I just want everybody to start by welcoming Dr. Colonel Blair.
You bet. Hey, it's a real pleasure to be with you again, Kaylin. It's been a fantastic year. We've had great successes, and I'm excited to talk to you and find out how you've done.
Yeah, we have so much to go over. This year has been amazing. We've even started a foundation for beta-caryophyllene to help veterans because of all the promise that this is showing with PTSD and veteran mental health. So we have a lot to go over that. We'll we'll start by digging right in and revisiting last video, just give a little overview. But the last video was more about my experience with BCP. I mean, the addiction, what's the word I'm looking for? The sensors, for example, I'm not vaping anymore. Weight loss has been great. And the biggest thing that I can tell you about, quick overview of BCP, is that the background noise and that chatter in my brain subsides and I can actually get through tasks. So
Wow,
that,
that's fantastic. Well, let me just talk with the basics about beta-caryophyllene. So beta-caryophyllene is a terpene substance that comes from natural food products like cloves, cinnamon, and hops. And it's extracted in a special way and then put into a different formula to make it highly bioavailable so that you can put this under your tongue and you get immediate absorption. So it gets immediate effects on the body.
yeah, and it's a terpene, right?
That's right. It's a
From what I
terpene.
remember.
It's a fragrant oil that we smell all the time. It's part of essential oils for doTERRA and a number of other companies that offer it. And it's incorporated in the Mediterranean diet in a big way. So everybody's using it, but they're not realizing the benefits that are coming from the beta-caryophyllene. And we abbreviate that BCP for ease of speech.
Yeah, it's really hard to spell as well. So VCP is a lot easier. Um, so today's focus, that being said, I really want to touch base since, we did start this foundation for veterans. I really would like you to explain how it's impacting our veterans. The Oh gosh, the dementia. We've had breakthroughs in dementia and Alzheimer's research. There was actually a new receptor even that I think there's a lot that maybe we can unravel together that has to do with, I mean, even suicide prevention, inflammation, the list goes on. So why don't we start at the very basic? Um,
Well, let's talk about our case study with the 95-year-old veteran who came
yes.
in presented with who is actually in hospice for dementia. And we got him started in beta-caryophyllene because he was falling down. He was very weak. He didn't have any cognitive function. And what we were able to do with the beta-caryophyllene is immediately reverse those symptoms. And then in that process, we discovered the real cause for his dementia and his impairment was because of a medicine, a cardiac medicine that he was using that increased his iodine level. So he was getting toxic effects from iodine. And over the last year, he has recovered from that tremendously. He's back to his normal functioning and he's actually driving. And he gave an interview with an incredible source of veteran affairs that were documenting his experiences during war and his experiences in the Antarctic. And so he's been a fabulous result, and he's thriving right now at 95 years old, and he's doing very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, the brain fog or I guess dementia, just, more clear. Driving at 95, first of all, is amazing, especially being on hospice. And he was actually taken off of hospice, correct?
That's right. Yeah. Mhm.
It's amazing. So definitely a lot to dive into with that. I mean, that's one of our biggest case studies. I know you have also have had a lot of clinical trials that have been ongoing as well.
Right.
And
So I've been involved with a number of clinical situations, mostly from having people use it and try it. So they're more of a case study examples that I've been using it on, and particularly in Parkinson's disease, PTSD, and even in suicide and inflammation that are going on. So I've been trying it for these people, and I've had fabulous results with respect to veterans in particular. Veterans who have been addicted or are on addictive substances, veterans who have been exposed to traumatic injuries, and so they have PTS, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and they've improved immeasurably with the BCP product. And now all they have to do is get started on it, is to use it in their mouth. They take about 1 milliliter orally, and then they will hold that in their mouth for a minute, and then they can swallow that, and their immediate effects are almost immediate, where it relieves anxiety, it relieves depression, and it has the potential for relieving suicide ideations as well.
I mean, that kind of like all encompasses, I mean, the mental health for veterans in general, especially those in those traumatic situations, overseas and the things that they've had to deal with and see. I know just even from me taking it, I've had just the mood enhancement has been it's night and day different. I'm a different person as soon as I take it. I mean, within 10 minutes, after I feel it immediately, 10 minutes, and then after like an hour, I'm just like, wow, I just feel so good. And then I remember it's because I took the beta-caryophyllene.
Yeah,
So,
one of the hallmarks of beta-caryophyllene dosing is laughter. Well, I see people who have sort of rigid facial expressions. They don't have any spontaneous reactions to their emotions in their face, and they get on beta-caryophyllene and they break out into a wide smile and they get to laughter. And there's always seems to be feelings of well-being that occur. So it's
yeah.
not a high effect. But it's been described as a high because you just feel good. You feel good about the world and the situation you're in. So it has amazing properties. Plus, it has pain relief properties as well. So most of the veterans are going to have some sort of pain or problems, and it has the potential for relieving much of that pain for individuals as a result of the anti-inflammatory and the neurotransmitter signaling that goes on with the beta-caryophyllene.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan. So I definitely, and I do want to get to the more in depth on the veterans, but first I know we spoke about our case study with our 95-year-old friend, and um, I really wanted to know kind of how does the beta caryophyllene exactly apply to someone who has dementia or has Alzheimer's? That I think is really important because I'm curious. I don't know.
Well, there's a number of different ways that it works. First of all, it works on the CB2 receptor of the body. That's an endocannabinoid receptor. There's a CB1 receptor and a CB2 receptor. And the CB1 receptor makes you high, but the CB2 receptor controls all the inflammation in your body. It's on every one of our immune cells, and it's located in the brain, so it's functioning as a brain, a behavioral component as well. So, working on the immune system, it's calming all levels of inflammation down. And in addition, it's signaling the body in terms of metabolism. So, it's upregulating the metabolism and increasing the functioning of the mitochondria. And that's a very important point in dementia, because so many of these neurodegenerative diseases are impaired because they have imbalances and dysfunction of their mitochondria. And if you can restore that functioning, you can restore much of the drive for every neurologic interconnection and every neurologic function that goes on. Plus, it actually signals the body to stimulate nerve connections. So it's forming neurogenesis, neuritogenesis. It's making dendrites and axons that are connecting up, and they're forming additional synapses. So
So
neuroplasticity is
new
going on.
pathways. So it's great for brain health then, because if it's making those new pathways, it's keeping you
Absolutely.
smart, right? Is that
Yeah.
the The layman's breakdown.
Plus, it's helping you to break down through autophagy. Autophagy is a process where you break down the discarded and the damaged molecules that are in the brain cells, and you get rid of these. And otherwise, if they stick around, they lead to inflammation and impairment of our cognitive capacity. But the beta-caryophyllene actually promotes the damage and destruction and the clearance for these metabolites
So
in the body.
it gets the waste removal like out of the cells. So it's been a while since I've taken biology, but the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. That's everybody knows that. They drill that into your brain. So it's where a lot of the energy, so if the energy of the it helps boost the energy, it gets rid of the toxic parts of the cell and it's just a healthier cell to have more energy.
Exactly.
That
It's energizing
correct?
and it's using our fuel properly. So often we get into a insulin resistance situation where the body's resistant to the insulin levels, and we're not using the glucose in the body in the brain properly. Well, beta-caryophyllene actually facilitates the use of glucose in the brain, and also it formulates and it forms ketone bodies that help to improve the metabolism of the mitochondria very specifically.
So would this be kind of why some of that brain fog, like what I was telling you about with the background noise, like in my head, it's like almost like an ADHD type thing. It just kind of smooths it out. Is this along the same lines of that?
Yes, what happens with that kind of brain fog is probably due to some levels of inflammation in the brain, and there may be even some leaky membranes that are going on because the blood-brain barrier under an inflammatory situation causes it to leak, and that can create inflammation in the brain and cause disruptions of the neural connections, and it can fog our functioning hugely. And so, what beta-caryophyllene does is it facilitates and it blocks it restores the impermeability, the non-leakiness of the brain membrane and the blood-brain barrier so that it's no longer leaking and you're not getting the inflammation in the brain. Now, the inflammation is connected to anxiety and depression as well. And so you're going to counteract those particular effects and you're going to get a clearing of your sensation and your thought processes. And you're going to be activating the prefrontal cortex, which is your decision-making part of the brain, to make good decisions again.
And that's like you said with the depression, that's definitely, I see a mood shift in myself. So, what have you seen with veterans who, they may be depressed? What have you seen in your studies working with veterans and alongside with the BCP?
Well, one of the things that I've learned more recently is that there's another cannabinoid receptor. It's called a GPR55. And this particular receptor is connected up to the CB2 receptor. And in that connection, there is a very positive effect on the consciousness, on your prefrontal cortex and the functioning and the antidepressant. In fact, it has been detected particularly at high levels in suicide victims. And so you get high levels of GPR55, which indicates that it's begging for a stimulus from an agonist. And beta-caryophyllene could go in and stimulate that receptor and appease the inflammation that's going on and the disruption in the process. So GPR55 is another cannabinoid receptor works on pain, on bone, on neuroprotection, on metabolism, on depression and suicide, and actually mast cell activation. So it works on all these areas, but in particular, I'm focused on the suicide prevention in PTSD because that's a major traumatic event for everybody. And I've had a number of people report that their suicide ideations magically disappear with the use of beta-caryophyllene, as well as their depressive symptoms.
I mean, and I've seen videos online just of, these veterans that they have nowhere to go or anything like that. And they're just having these thoughts. And, sometimes it ends great and they're saved and sometimes it doesn't. So this would be massive I mean,
There's
just
another receptor system that is activated by beta-caryophyllene, and that has to do with the brain-derived neurotrophic factor and the nerve growth factor, actually. And beta-caryophyllene stimulates these particular receptors, and these are the receptors that are actually activated when you use psychotropics like LSD, ketamine, and psilocybin. These particular receptors are highly activated, and beta-caryophyllene makes a connection with this brain-derived neurotrophic factor to counteract depression. And I believe that's the reason why it can happen so quickly.
I mean, like I said, 10 minutes, instant mood boost. So I can only imagine for someone who takes it for a prolonged amount of time. Is there a certain amount of time that you've worked with these veterans to notice a change? I know you said it activates the prefrontal cortex, and that's like your decision making. So if you're having bad bad thoughts, I mean, your decision making will be clearer to not act on those bad thoughts. I
That's
mean,
right, and
that's
it's
the basic.
spontaneous. The spontaneous sort of actions that people do when they are in a suicide ideation, then they could perform some inappropriate task that could be damaging and destructive. And what beta-caryophyllene does is that it restores the consciousness and the logic to that, and gets away from the emotional and the stress situation. And that's another magical property of beta-caryophyllene is it's a limitation on stress phenomena as well as improving sleep at the same time.
We all need that. We all need the sleep, at least I do. So yeah, so going into the prefrontal cortex and along with mental health, so that's what we were just talking about with the decision making and kind of giving that like a time, like it kind of slows it down, allows you to process everything
Right.
better.
So
And I
you're gonna get started on the beta caryophyllene. You'll have these things correct. But over time, I've seen resolution of many problems if people will continue to use it. Now, oftentimes people stop it for whatever reason. They think they're better, they think they're healthy again, and they want to quit. And so often they backslide into those situations. Now, it doesn't stop the effects immediately, but over time, over a couple of weeks, then you will decrease the performance enhancement of beta caryophyllene, and you may require additional BCP. Have you experienced anything like that?
Yes, you probably saw me waving at you when you said that because that I did. I took it for a few months and I was losing weight. I didn't have those emotional eating cravings. I noted that was a big thing for me because I'm like an emotional eater. Whenever I had a task I didn't want to do, I procrastinate by going and eating. So this, taking that was a huge thing that I noticed was weight loss and took away the emotional eating, the vaping. So when I stopped, because I'm like, well, I'm doing great, I feel great. And I think too, you don't get over time, once your body regulates, at least for me, you didn't have such a jump in like the feeling, I guess, because you're already, at least I felt better. So, if I'm really tired and I'm not getting all this good sleep when I take the dropper, it would wake me up. But since I'm getting sleep, I didn't notice that. So I kind of slowly stopped taking it, back to vaping, crappy sleep. I gained 15 pounds, which I am not happy about. So, taking it consecutively month by month, and as soon as I got back on it, I mean, immediate effects.
So
So,
those immediate effects can be long-term effects. And what I find in many people is that there changes their entire psychology because I believe that beta-caryophyllene actually changes the DNA and the genetic functioning through epigenetic factors. So it's signaling the nucleus of the cell and the neurons and the immune cells in a way that is changing the DNA molecules in their activity. And in that epigenetic changes, these can result in long-term functional changes in the body as a result of using BCP. And I think that's why I see considerable productivity, considerable pain relief, considerable physical and health factors that are improving across the board and cognitive factors. So typically when people has been on it for 3 months, they become dedicated to a particular mission or a function, and they become totally involved with that, and all of their energy goes into that, but in a very, very constructive way.
The productivity and what I was when you mentioned that, I mean it allowed me to create systems that I could follow. So you're after, a month and creating these habits. I mean, it really has changed my life. I mean, I have two kids, and just even keeping an order and, just knowing the tasks in front of me and keeping into a routine. And I mean, if it's night and day, even from a year ago when I talked to you. I mean, my house was trash, like, now it's like, okay, this is how we're doing things. And it allowed me to put those systems in place. And I mean, thank you.
Well,
So,
that's fabulous. That's a
yeah.
terrific testimonial right there. And I so appreciate you talking with you, Cailin. It's been really valuable experience to educate you on these particular factors.
Yeah, and I look forward to hearing more about the new receptor and the applications with our veterans. And I think, revisiting the C Foundation, we want to work together and try to get this in as many veterans' hands as possible, and just spread the help. So I'm really excited about that.
Terrific. That's very good. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, thank you. I'll talk to you soon, I'm sure. Hopefully sooner than this time. All right, have a good day.